Number 5. In 2009, just 2 months before her death, a 60-year-old woman named Sharon Diane Crawford Smith confessed to shooting 2 women at an ice cream store some 42 years earlier. Apparently, the 2 women had been taunting her for being a lesbian, and according to Smith, she was pushed too far. Following this confession, Smith was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, though all went according to plan and Smith's court dates were all postponed due to health problems, leading her to ultimately pass away before doing any prison time. Police said that following this, they're working very hard to close the case and contact any remaining loved ones. According to Smith's confession, she and the 2 victims worked at a small ice cream shop. She headed over to the shop one evening to tell the women that she would be unable to work the following day, and took her gun with her as protection. Smith says that one thing led to another, and the girls began teasing her about her sexuality, as they had done countless times in the past, which caused Smith to become angered, shooting them both. Police officers at the scene of the confession say that Smith expressed great shame in herself and seemed extremely concerned for the victims' families. She was extremely insistent on closing the case so that the families may finally have some sort of closure. According to Smith, she was able to get away with murder all of these years due to the help of a detective who was working the case. Apparently, the detective knew that she had a gun and knew she was likely the killer, but offered to help her dispose of the evidence. She said that at the time, it seemed like the best thing to do. Number 4. In 1962, 3 convicts managed to escape from the Alcatraz prison, located on Alcatraz Island, and flee to a shore using a makeshift raft, with the help of accomplices from the outside. However, according to a deathbed confession, these men were actually killed just a short time after their successful escape. A man who remains anonymous told a nurse that just hours before his death, he and another accomplice helped the men flee by boat. However, he said that just days later, the accomplice turned on the men and took them to a bridge near Seattle where he shot them and buried them. Police who were informed of this claim state that they had no idea whether or not to believe the man, but that they plan to search the areas he mentioned for the bodies, and if any are found, they'll hopefully close the case. This outlandish claim is actually backed up by an eyewitness account from an off-duty police officer who claims to have seen 5 men matching the individual's description on the night of their escape. Though since the crime had not yet been made public, he had no idea that these were escapees and thought little of them. The man was then questioned heavily by the FBI, insisting that he should have reported the event. This man's deathbed confessional, however, isn't the only claim regarding these 3 men. In fact, one of the escapees' nephews claims to have received letters in the mail, as well as photos from his uncle claiming that he was still alive and well in Brazil for up to 25 years following the escape. Because of this, officers on the case have genuinely no idea who to believe, and at the time of this video, no further leads have been found. Number 3. Geraldine Kelly was known as an extremely tough woman, according to those around her. Family and friends state that she had numerous attack dogs, alarming tattoos, and even owned a 6-foot boa constrictor that she held around her neck while she managed a motel that she owned. However, Geraldine, or Jerry's story, takes a much darker turn, one that her co-workers say was completely unexpected, as regardless of Jerry's tough girl persona, she was an extremely nice woman and very easy to get along with. As Jerry became older, she eventually became ill due to cancer. Because of this, just days before her death, Jerry confessed to the world that she had murdered her husband after their marriage had been on the rocks for many years. She stated that back in 1991, she shot her husband, the father of her children, in the head. She then took his body and stuffed it into a freezer which was placed in a storage facility. Her children later led police to the facility where authorities confirmed that the body was in fact her husband's. Jerry states that she and John met in a tough neighborhood in Somerville, where they had both grown up. John was a gifted auto mechanic and an overall nice guy, though he had a drinking problem. His drinking eventually led to the accidental death of one of his close friends back in the 1980s. This was when John and Jerry decided it was time to move to California and attempt to start a new life together. After this, John's lifelong friends state that they never heard from him again. According to these individuals, John and Jerry never had any sort of violent arguments, though they were always verbally fighting, with one man stating that Jerry was tough and refused to back down from anything. Once the couple arrived in California, they drifted from one job to another, typically managing apartment complexes. However, they eventually settled down in 1991 when they were both employed at a Victorian hotel. According to co-workers, this gig worked out well for Jerry as she was exceptionally tough and refused to take excuses from anyone, ensuring that all bills were paid on time and all of the rules were appropriately followed. Her husband, in turn, helped with plumbing, repairs, and odd jobs around the motel. It was shortly after this that workers claimed that John had to return home to Massachusetts to help out with family business for a short time, though after this, no one saw him again. A few weeks later, Jerry informed her co-workers that John had been struck and killed by a motorist while crossing the street, dying instantly. This was the story that she stuck with until her deathbed confession. Following her reveal, a co-worker stated that she didn't believe Jerry got away with the murder because she died of cancer. She believes that this cancer was either God's way or John's way of getting back at her. Number 2. Oliver Stone was the director of the hit film JFK, to which he states the story is not true per se. It explores all the possible scenarios of why Kennedy was killed, who killed him, and why. According to many, this movie is to thank for many of the Kennedy conspiracies that have arisen over the years, and may also be the cause for Kennedy's assassination documents having been revealed after all this time. As in 1992, just months after this film's release, President Bush was pushed into issuing an official release date for all files pertaining to the murder, which he said would be released by October of 2017. According to Oliver, the film was obviously based on actual events. However, he claims to have had insider information as to what really happened to Kennedy, and says that this information was incorporated into the film, though it was portrayed as fiction. Oliver claims to have been contacted by a man known simply as Ron, who insisted that he was a former Secret Service agent and wanted to clear his conscience before passing away from cancer. Though Ron only made contact with Oliver through means of strange, vague letters and postal codes. Oliver claims that he firmly believes this man was telling the truth, and says that Ron claims that Kennedy was killed by his own men, a theory that had actually been circulating for many years. Oliver claims that if this were true, it would have likely been the perfect crime, as no one would have thought to investigate the men responsible for protecting the president as possible suspects in his murder. Regardless, even after the recent release of thousands of documents pertaining to Kennedy's assassination, we still have no answers as to why the president was killed. Number 1. Fritz Moen was a Norwegian man who was wrongfully convicted for 2 felony murders, eventually leading him to serve 18 years in prison. However, he was ultimately released in 2004 after a judge and jury accepted a retrial which cleared Fritz of any possible involvement in the murders. According to many, Fritz's conviction is one of the largest miscarriages of justice in Norwegian history. According to the official report, the victims of this crime were attacked from behind, tied up, then beaten and murdered. However, Fritz had a severe physical disability, which would not have allowed him to perform any of these tasks. In addition to this, Fritz had a solid alibi for the night of the attack, and forensic evidence could not tie him to the scene of the crime. Regardless, Fritz was convicted and was released just 1 year before his death. After Fritz's passing in December of 2005, a man by the name of Tor, a convicted felon with a long history of violence, made a deathbed confession that he had actually been the murderer of the 2 victims. Later in 2006, his confession was investigated and accepted as truthful, though the man passed away before any additional time could be placed onto his sentence. Following this, Fritz's family received a settlement of $2 million for the wrongful conviction of their loved one. A statue of Fritz was also erected in his honor, located just outside the Norwegian Ministry of Justice building, as a symbol of the responsibility the criminal justice system must bear. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.